Okay, welcome back to the Rough Cuts Garage. Today we're going to be installing an Tachometer Z Series diesel tachometer into our First Gen Cummins. So the parts that I picked up for this job, obviously the Tachometer Z Series tachometer goes from 0 to 4,000 RPM. I've got the alternator transmitter here, along with the Tachometer diesel Tach adapter. Another thing I'm going to need is a fuse tap that I'm going to put into the fuse box that's underneath the dash in order to have dimming feature for the backlighting. I think I've decided to mount the tachometer in the corner here. A lot of people will mount it down on the column, and I'm not a huge fan of that look just because it kind of blocks the rest of the gauges. This one is more like the dealer tachs that would have been installed. I'm gonna try and not drill into my dash initially in case I'm not a huge fan of the position after driving. So I'm gonna use some like 3M double-sided tape. So here's a snapshot of the Tachometer Tach installation instructions. I'm just gonna try and find the wires that actually need to stay in the cab and the ones that need to go through the firewall. The white wire is gonna need to stay in the cab because I'm gonna splice that into the fuse panel with a fuse tap. The red one here goes to the ignition, so that's going to go through the firewall because I have switched power on my fuse block. The black will also go through because that goes to the ground side, and the green goes to the Tach terminal. I've got my auxiliary fuse block set up. So the top part is switched power and the bottom part is constant power, and it runs off that solenoid there. And then I have my hole that goes through the firewall. One thing I'm gonna do to the truck first is I'm gonna shut off all the power. So what I'm gonna do is just run the wires down the side, up, and then over top of the brake pedal bracket. And then you can see here, that's where we're gonna run the red and black wires. Okay, so right here's the hole the wires come out of here. Probably gonna have to extend these so that they can work their way to my fuse panel here. So a few tools and equipment you might need as well. Wire strippers. These are ratcheting crimpers. I've got some 16 gauge red and black marine grade wire. Also gonna need a heat gun. Here's the butt connectors here. I'm going to be using, I believe they're 18 to 22 AUG marine grade shrink wrap butt connectors. And then I also have 14 to 16 AUG connectors for my fuse block. What we're going to do is tap this white wire into the fuse panel that's just under the steering column here. Put it on a fuse that has a dimmable light source, and that way whenever you go to dim your dash lights, your tach will also dim with this knob here. So one other thing I plan on doing is a set of overhead gauges. That'll be in another video. But I also want those gauges to dim as well. So what I'm going to do is for my fuse tap, I'm going to run a larger butt connector. I'm going to plug the white wire from the tach into this butt connector along with a spare wire that when I go to do the install for the other gauges, I can just tap into that extra wire that's coming off. So in the meantime here, what I'm going to do is fish this wire up and over underneath the dash. The fuse that you need to tap into is fuse number 14, right there. And that's for the instrument lights. They're both 3 amp fuses, so I just put 2 3 amp fuses in there. So switch power for the tach and everything. When you go turn on the instrument lights, you can see they're kind of flickering there, but the tach light will dim as you dim the switch here for your gauge cluster. So what we're going to do now is attach the sensor to the alternator loosely because it will require fine tuning afterward. And then we can mount the diesel tach adapter and start connecting all the wires to the gauge. To go across the mid plane here of the alternator, so I'm going to slide it in like that. So right here, she's sort of tight in position there. It might require some fine tuning, which we'll do when the engine's running. So now we're going to run the wire into the cab. Here's the diesel tach adapter. These two black wires I gather from the instructions. So this black wire and this black wire are both grounds, I'm assuming. One ground for this and one ground for the sensor. Either one of these black wires can plug into the smooth black wire off the sensor. So what we're gonna do now is mount this underneath the dash and then send the wires that we need to send through, which I believe are purple, both blacks, and red through the firewall. Green can stay in the cab. But making sure to leave that the button in the middle is still accessible for when we want to calibrate the tachometer. Okay, so you can see that I've mounted it up here, kind of out of the way, and the button's still accessible. This, for reference, is the driver gas pedal there. Here's the tach adapter, and then it runs along with all the other wires I have underneath. Not touching, this here is the brake pedal shaft, so it's not touching the sensor up here or anything. All zip tied together over top the steering column, and then I'll start hooking stuff up on this side. And then also running it through the firewall hole, which is around here somewhere. So I've connected all of the wires from the adapter to both the sensor and to my auxiliary fuse block here. So I've got them mounted in here, just one on top of the other for the ground and the power on the switch side of the 3 amp circuit breaker. So that runs through the loom here, in through the firewall to the adapter and the tach. So I've got the purple wire and the other black wire that's on the adapter hooked up to the striped white for the purple and the solid black to the sensor. And that runs all the way along firewall down over the fender and then to the alternator. So the instructions say that you need to calibrate the back of the tachometer to however many cylinders your engine is. So because it's a 5.9 Cummins, 6 cylinders, so you need to have this configuration with the switches on the back. So here's the back of the tach here. I'm gonna need an Allen key to get at this screw, and then I can pop the back cover, carefully sliding it so that the grommet doesn't break off from the wires. But I'll have to slide this back off, make sure it's calibrated to the right setting. It's 3/32 Allen key to remove the back nut here. So right there, you can probably see the two little switches, and they're in the wrong configuration. You got number 1 in the down position and number 2 is in the up position there. So now we're set for a 6 cylinder. So you can put the light back in. Now would be a time to swap this out to LED, as it does come with an incandescent. Since everything is hooked up, let's give it a test to see if the tach actually picks up the signal. Basically what you do is you run the vehicle, the tach might start bouncing, and what you're going to do is move this sensor left and right to try and find where the needle stops bouncing and stays steady. One final thing is, don't forget to cut this shorter so it's not swinging around in your engine bay. Okay, so the final step with the installation of the tachometer is to calibrate it. So what I've got over here is this laser reader. It's a digital photo tachometer. Just picked it up off Amazon. It was like 30 bucks. It comes with its own reflective tape as well for the application. Wife's gonna be running the show in the cab. What's gonna happen is, located underneath the dash here, we've got the diesel tach adapter, or the DTA. There's a button in the middle of it. What Ashley's gonna have to do is press and hold that button, start the truck, let go of that button. Then she's going to apply the gas until I signal her with the green broom down here, because I'm gonna be under the vehicle reading the RPM. When I'm at 1,000, I'm gonna signal. She'll keep the gas at 1,000. She'll go back under again, hit the button, let go of the button, and the tachometer should read 1,000. When she lets off the gas afterward, it should go down to around 711, as we tested earlier with the RPM reader. Okay, so we've done a few runs now, and what we're noticing is the gauge is only reading around 900 RPM at idle, and judging from this, we're at about 720, I would call it, for RPM actual at idle. So what we just did is we're trying to trick it so that it actually reads 7-ish, 720. In order to get the RPM down, we're actually increasing the RPM, so at about 1100 to 1200 RPM is when we're actually going to be doing the calibration. So when the truck is actually at 1200 RPM, we run the calibration, and then by the time the calibration's done, the tachometer will read lower because it thinks that it's calibrating at 1000 RPM, and we're tricking it. So we ran it up to around 1200 RPM, and now we're sitting at around 730. So that's exactly where we want for idle speed. So we can consider the truck tachometer calibrated for now. Thank you very much, Mrs. Roughcuts. Okay, so that sums up the job of installing an Autometer Z Series diesel tachometer with the diesel tach adapter and the alternator sensor. Thanks for watching, and hope this video helps. Cheers.